All right, guys, coming at you with some parabolas. You got to find two things today on these parabolas. You got to come up with vertex. You got to find axis of symmetry. Two things you got to find today. Let me show you how to get them. First, in your function, you're going to be looking at these two numbers in those two spots right there. Now, if it's inside the parentheses, you got to change the sign. So if it says plus 5, you would think going right, but it's actually left. It's going to be negative 5. So inside parentheses, change the sign. Out here, he's good. You don't have to change the sign at all. If it says minus 2, you leave it minus 2. So these two numbers right here make up your vertex point for your parabola. That's finding the vertex. The other thing you have to find is a cool line that splits your vertex, the axis of symmetry. So for our axis of symmetry, it's always a line that sets up x equals, we just got to find the number that fills in that spot. It's the number right here, negative 5. So your line of symmetry is the line x equals negative 5. So when you write your answer, you got to include x equals because it's a line, and then vertex you got to have it written as an ordered pair because it is a point. All right, let's sketch the graph of this. See what a graph of this would look like. So here's a little graph right there. You can see that. You would run left 5, down 2, negative 5, negative 2. So maybe over to here, down here, boom. So there's your point, there's your vertex point, negative 5, negative 2. We've got ourselves a parabola. Now, on your parabola, what the axis of symmetry looks like is it's this line, vertical line coming straight through there. And what it does is it splits your parabola right down the middle. So we can label this line as our axis of symmetry, x equals negative 5. We can label our parabola, y equals x plus 5 squared minus 2. So for this problem, find vertex, find axis of symmetry. Those are new. Sketch the graph, get your line right down the middle. You've got everything labeled. Looks good. So this is what you got to do on your problems today. All right, let's do another one. I think we've got the gist of it already. Let's do a second one. F of x, x minus 10 squared plus 8. Okay, so right now we look at the two numbers, the negative 10 and the 8. The 10 is inside the parentheses, so we know it becomes positive 10. The 8 keeps his sign on the outside. He doesn't change. Inside parentheses, you change the sign. Outside the parentheses, you leave the sign the same. So 10, 8, that's going to be our vertex point. So if you're thinking about a graph of this, wow, it's going to be way over here. Here's 0, 0, 10, all the way up there to 8. It's way out there on a graph. So there's 10 and 8. We can sketch our parabola. You got to come up with your axis of symmetry. That's this line that comes right down the middle. So that's your line, x equals 10. Then you make sure that you label your graph. Y equals x minus 10 squared plus 8. So our job is we've got to find the vertex and we've got to find the axis of symmetry. So the vertex is always an ordered pair. So your 10, 8, you want to get it labeled, ordered pair, comma, parentheses, the whole thing. Axis of symmetry, remember it's always a line, x equals 10. So you can't just write 10, you got to write x equals 10. So the two things you got to find, vertex, axis of symmetry, sketch your graph, label, label, label. You're in business. need the equal sign there. All right, third one. X plus 3 squared. Oh, what if there's not a number on the end? Let's say we've got nothing out here. We've got the 3, but we don't have a number out there. You could still find the vertex point pretty quick. Inside here, we know we're changing it. So this was positive 3, negative 3. If you don't have anything out here, you just represent that with a 0. So negative 3, 0 is going to be your vertex point. So maybe about right here. So there's negative 3 and 0. Sketch your parabola. And you got your axis of symmetry that's coming straight down that splits it right down the middle. And remember, it comes from here. Whatever this coordinate is, whatever that number is, that's your axis of symmetry. Label your parabola. So you've got your parabola labeled, boom. Vertex labeled, boom. Axis of symmetry. So our job is to find vertex, axis of symmetry. Remember, vertex is always an ordered pair, so when you go to make it look good, get the parentheses, get the comma in the middle. Axis symmetry, you always write x equals, not just negative 3. It's a line, so you write x equals negative 3. So we got our graph looking good, everything labeled. We found our vertex, we found our axis symmetry, everything's boxed up. Feeling pretty good. All right, let's do 5 examples. That's 3 of them. Let's throw in some crazy stuff on these last 2. Let's put in the shrinks and the stretches. Let's see what we got here for number 4. A negative 2, okay, and a reflection. All right, we're going to flip this one. Minus 4, minus 3. Okay, even though there's a negative 2 out in front of this one, don't let that shake you. The vertex is still the same. You still look at these 2 numbers to find your vertex. Negative 4 becomes positive 4. Negative 3 stays negative 3. So that's going to be my vertex point. So we go to sketch our graph. So we go over 4, we go down 3. So there's my point, 4, negative 3. So on a graph, 4, negative 3 sitting right there. Now, how does this graph look? We know it's a parabola, but that negative makes it a reflection. So a parabola that was opening up now opens down. Let's think about what the 2 does. So is the 2 a shrink that flattens it, or is the 2 a stretch? So 2's a stretch. So when you graph this, it changes the look of your parabola, stretches it out. And you want to make sure to get your axis of symmetry in there. So here's your line, x equals 4. Here's your parabola. Whoa, look at this one. So y equals negative 2, x minus 4 squared minus 3. So I've got everything labeled over there. Got my axis of symmetry, got my vertex point, I've got my parabola stretched. Okay, let's write it. Whoops. So vertex, 4, negative 3. Axis of symmetry, remember it's x equals 4. So on this one you had a stretch and you had a negative that reflected. So our job's still the same. Find your vertex, find your axis of symmetry, make a good looking picture, you're in business. All right, we're trying one more. And you probably guessed we just did a stretch. So may as well throw a shrink in there with a fraction. Let's throw in a fraction. What do we got here? Another negative, okay. So negative 1/4 plus 6 plus 7. Okay, first off, just run and find that vertex point. Don't worry about the negative, don't worry about the 1/4. Vertex still comes from those 2 numbers. Those 2 numbers. So here is negative 6, here is positive 7. This inside parentheses changes sign. This outside of parentheses keeps the same sign. So that's what I'm working with. So negative 6 way up here, here's 7. So that's my vertex point for my parabola, negative 6 and 7. Think about now what the negative sign and what the 1/4 do to the look of your graph. The negative sign, instead of opening upwards, means it's going to open down. The 1/4 is a shrink, so it kind of flattens out the look of your parabola. So let's flatten it out and open it down. So it gives it more of that look, and it opens down. Let's run the axis of symmetry straight through there. So that's, oops, not y, x equals. So x equals, and which is it, your x coordinate or y coordinate? It's always the x. X equals negative 6. Let's label this, y equals negative 1/4, x plus 6 squared plus 7. So I've got my vertex, I got my graph, I got my axis symmetry, got my picture looking pretty good. Come back and get the two things you're required to find, vertex, axis of symmetry. Vertex always looks like an ordered pair. Axis of symmetry, always written with x equals negative 6 as a line. All right, so for these parabolas, make an awesome graph, label everything, state your vertex, state axis symmetry. You got it.